opened up. I mean, they say he's actually like a millionaire, but he's got his own internet streaming service,
Mm-hmm.
and he recruited this guy Ethan Ralph, who's had the Kill Stream, which was one of the most popular shows on YouTube that they banned anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he's also on other platforms, so he's been hosting debates for years. So he hosted the E. Michael Jones, Adam Green debate on whether Jesus is mythological, a Jewish conspiracy. And E. Michael Jones actually said over your joke, he didn't mention your name, about the disputation. Was it Tartuza? The
Tartosa. Yeah.
Tartosa in the beginning of Jewish comedy, where Yechiel Maparis says that it could have been, there are a lot of people named Jesus is every Louis, King of Paris.
Exactly. That's right. That was when King Louis was burned something like 400 Talmuds on the grounds of the Chateau de Ville in Paris in the 9th century, I believe, due to an expose allegedly by Nicholas Donin, who was a heretic, a Jew.
Yeah, we talked about that. I mentioned like a year ago that there's some evidence, to say that if Yechiel Maparis had really, bullied Nicholas Donin just for not falling in line or asking too many questions, and then after he got excommunicated, that else he would have been expelled. He had to convert to Christianity, but the records is like, this Donin, just this horrible troublemaker.
Right.
But the possibility that really Yechiel Maparis unnecessarily picked on him for you're just
Possibly.
asking basic questions that led up to the burning of the Talmud.
It's also fair to say that there very well may have been some passages in the Talmud that I would suggest were misunderstood. But either way, the Pope in Rome did have a certain amount of say over the rabbis, in the same way that he had a certain amount of say over priests and over bishops. I mean, this was before the Protestant Reformation. And I'll give an example of that in that at the time of the Crusades, there was a poem that was written by a rabbi that is now recited on Hanukkah, the Rock of Ages. You know that song, right?
Yeah, I mean, Matzor.
Ma'atzor, Yasuati. And there was some passages, it became very popular in Europe at the time. It was written in the Middle Ages. But there were a couple of passages in that were not exactly, nice in terms of like, we pray that the Crusaders are destroyed and that they fall on the rocks of of the Mediterranean, and they all drown, and we hope and pray for their defeat. And the Pope at the time sent a letter to the author, who was a rabbi, a very prominent rabbi in Germany, telling him to edit that out, saying that this was not appropriate, in the same way that he would have sent a letter to a priest saying, you can't say this, you can't say that, because that's just how the church worked. And the rabbi complied, and those verses were removed. So, the whole scandal could have been handled that way. Rather than burning Talmuds, they could have just said, look, we find these passages to be offensive. Whether or not they actually were or not is another question. But given the fact that the Pope was the supreme ruler of all matters religion in Europe, including over Judaism, I think that what would have been respected, and actually it was respected, because apparently I actually spoke with a Talmudic expert about this off the record, and he told me that indeed there were things that were taken out of the Talmud at the order of the popes. So, in a way, we should view that that controversy in that concept. What is Nicholas Fuentes' channel called?
Cozy TV. It's his own webpage streaming service.
Really? You mean, look, I'm not an admirer by any means, but I think it's interesting that in response to the censorship, people are establishing their own networks, and they're doing well with it. I mean, it's I mean, it's interesting. Certainly Alex Jones kind of forged the trail on that.
I mean,
And
that woman from Politically Provoked who I wasn't successfully able to get on this show that got kicked off of YouTube is now on Cozy TV, and now they're getting hundreds of regular viewers. And God forbid, the other day they were having like anti-Semitic super chats where they have it so the super chats are read by a computer voice, and so now that it's uncensored, they have like horrible anti-Semitic super chats. God forbid.
God
Um,
forbid, do they let somebody come on, like maybe yourself or someone else, to challenge those views? I mean, look, E. Michael Jones, as you said, he was
I don't
interviewed
think
with
it's
that station.
beneficial.
I've challenged him. I mean, and I
They
think
had
that
someone the other day that, yeah, and he was really bad, God forbid, like an
uh
anonymous Jew, and they portrayed him as kind of like a stalker, which maybe he is, but um, it probably wouldn't help. Like I don't think it'd benefit anything for me to maybe in a certain venue to have a serious conversation on theology. And just back to Nicholas Dunn, if that the Talmud was probably burnt, at least from their perspective, for the benefit of the Jews, as opposed to the Pablo Christiani versus Nachmanides debate, where the Jews ended up getting expelled shortly after.
right.
The the Talmud was seen as the hindrance to the Jews converting to Christianity. And I watched your Jay Dyer debate, and it's like, God forbid, like you think um, the famous Amnon Gon prayer we say on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur about the rabbi who almost said he was going to convert to Christianity and said, "Give me 3 days to think about it," and then after 3 days he was scared to come, and the local person said he's going to cut out his tongue, and instead he cut off his arms and legs for not coming. And then he goes to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah and with his dying breath says the famous Usana Toketh prayer. That's one of the highlights of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. But he said that like he had, God forbid, deserved that because that he had insinuated that it was possible that he might convert to Christianity. And even thinking of the Crusades, our own literature, we like maybe our ancestors, I don't know, direct ancestors, to know certainly, not only killed ourselves but murdered our own women and
Yeah.
children,
Mhm.
and so that they wouldn't be able to convert to during the Crusades, where there was either convert or die.
Yep.
Where and we say in our prayer services regularly honoring, and it's unclear how many people or how many times it happened, but actually killed our own women and children because we were scared that if we just killed ourselves, that our women and children would have been too weak and had converted to Christianity. And then it's even questioned in the rabbinic responsa whether it was okay to, God forbid, kill our own children to prevent them from converting to Christianity. And certainly, Abe Foxman from the ADL was saved by Christians, and then there was a whole thing getting him back from, he's baptized, getting him back from the Christians. And some of the, before the Holocaust, probably the cases of biggest Jewish activism were about saving Jews who had been adopted by the church and taking them away from Christianity. So I was, God forbid, in E. Michael Jones had, uh, just to put on the theme, like like the whether the Talmud was burnt from their perspective, that as a favor to the Jews, because they thought the Talmud was the hindrance to the Jews converting to Christianity, as opposed to like anti-Semitism, to an expulsion, like
Right.
after Nachmanides. And then E. Michael Jones, saying he likes Jews. Um, Actually, I saw this when the Westboro Baptist Church had came to Flatbush, and I wasn't there, but I saw a video to protest Jews in Flatbush, and they're holding up, the God forbid, their signs, God hates the Jews, and the person claimed them, like anti-Semitism. The woman from the Westboro Baptist Church says, "Oh, no, I don't hate the Jews. God hates the Jews," and that's kind of what E. Michael Jones said, where like, because what you were talking about with Jay Dyer and the if God forbid we're cursed according to Christianity, but E. Michael Jones saying like he likes the Jews, he wants to convert the Jews, and he even said that he's converted some Jews. I think God forbid people are thinking maybe they meant you. Maybe E. Michael Jones is like, no, I've converted a few Jews. God forbid, maybe he means you. But that perspective where E. Michael Jones is like, no, he personally likes the Jews. It's God that doesn't like the Jews.
Well, something I think that has been, as I said to Jay Dyer, I think that was somewhat of a conventional Christian view right up to modern times, right up to right up, I would argue, up to World War II and the Nazi Holocaust, which I think shook the Christian.
For some of the cozy, it's like mainstream already. Like I don't even think I'd go on the platform because I think it's the consensus of like, their Nicholas Fuentes, E. Michael Jones, dissident.
I'm not a fan of either of those people.
But I think at some point it'd be consensus and going to that turf.
And Nick Fuentes, isn't he like a white supremacist or white nationalist? I mean, he wants a white America, that kind of stuff.
No, I mean, he's actually multicultural and he's got like blacks, and I mean he's half Hispanic. He's just, I mean, God forbid, Holocaust Memorial Day, things have become so watered down that everybody's basically a Nazi. Where you to give a gradation, where to understand what his positions are, and so he's alt-right, he and he's just anti-immigration,
but he's anti-immigration from a racial standpoint. I mean, he wants to preserve the white nature of America. He doesn't want non-whites coming in. I mean, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but that's my understanding.
Well, that is his, but I was just watching this guy Medoff, who's a professor of Holocaust studies, specializes in FDR, and I mean, but that was FDR's position. That was
no doubt it.
That was consensus opinion of majority of America up really to the 1950s, maybe. But to say he's not, to put him in the class as a white supremacist. I remember on the Ralph Retort that now is on Cozy TV, where he debated, or maybe it was Baked Alaska, that's also on Cozy TV, debated Richard Spencer, and he was alt-right. I mean, Richard Spencer was basically told him, you're not white. So like from the ADL perspective, you're saying Nicholas Fuentes is a white supremacist, but when he debated Richard Spencer, he said the exact same thing Richard Spencer said to you, is like, you're not white, like, aren't you Jewish?
I see. Right, so exactly.
So if you're putting it there that Nick Fuentes is and even you, like, saying like, God forbid that like censorship, that the same dog whistles would say, okay, like like just Republicans. There's a lot of random things that we could talk about. The polling this week about MSNBC was talking about, it was on a lot of news about Republicans' attitude towards candidates, where 3/4 of Republicans felt that it wasn't that it was okay to have a candidate that was anti-homosexual. I think 38, it was phrased in the opposite way, where would it be too much to have a candidate? It was like 38% that said that if the person was anti-black, that meant that they couldn't be a candidate. For Jews, it was 49%, where 49% of Republicans felt that anti-Semitism meant that that the person shouldn't be a candidate. But it was like 2/3 of only 1/3 of Republicans were bothered by, so to say, white replacement. So from the ADL perspective.
Wait a minute. So this poll said that over 50% of Republicans polled felt that it was not appropriate to have a Jewish, black, or gay candidate for office.
That it would be problematic. I forget the exact word, but it would be something that would be prohibitive for a candidate if they were anti-Semitic or if they espoused. So 49% of Republicans said if the candidate was anti-Semitic, it would be prohibitive of them being a Republican candidate. 38% said if they were anti-Black, it would be prohibitive. So it was phrased in that way, presumably that 50% of Republicans don't think it would be prohibitive if a candidate is anti-Semitic. And, so I mean, Jews are the most popular of the minorities, relatively.
Dooovid, I mean, I'd have to see that poll. I mean, it's not that I'm doubting you, but I think that I find that a little hard to believe. I mean, it seems like you have to take a look at how these questions are asked, who is being asked, how was it a random sampling? What was the length of the width of the sampling? What was the polling agency? Was this a sampling or was this a directed poll where people basically dialed it in? I mean, I'm a little skeptical about the veracity of that. I mean, I just don't think Republicans have any problem with.
It was Gallup, even. It was on MSNBC, the New York Times.
That makes me even more suspicious. Was
it
George
Reed?
Suspicious,
but
I don't know, Dooovid. I mean,
I wouldn't surprise the numbers. I'm saying that it doesn't mean that 50% of Republicans, God forbid, are anti-Semitic. And they said the Jews
and
are
that
Jews are the most
tolerating
popular,
anti-Semitic candidate.
Jews are the most popular of the minorities. Like relatively, we're the most popular.
They
but
wouldn't
to say that they just don't think it's a problem if someone's anti-Semitic. That doesn't mean that that 50% of Republicans are anti-Semitic. They just think that.
I'm very suspicious of it, only because we're entering into an election year where it looks like Republicans are going to have historic margins of victory in both houses. And I think that there's going to be all kinds of this sort of stuff coming up now. This is a standard boilerplate attack by liberal Democrats against Republicans.
This we had here in Michigan, where a Republican nominee for Congress has said things that are interpreted to be anti-Semitic. In the papers,
were they as anti-Semitic as Republican Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, saying that the Holocaust makes her feel all warm and fuzzy?
Well, I mean, Rashida Tlaib spoke and honored, and I think lit a candle for Holocaust Memorial Day today.
Good for her, but the point is, she's made comments in the past that are more than just possibly anti-Semitic. Now, I'm just saying that.
Let me just throw the word around where it's saying this Republican doesn't represent Jewish constituents. Rashida Tlaib is going to be my congressperson. Not only does she currently represent thousands of Jews, likely after this election, she'll represent the majority of Michigan Jews. But this was just comments that the Republicans, even Ron Wiesner, the Jewish head of the Republican Party, thought it was a non-issue.
Well, what were the comments, and who was it? Was it a sitting congressman, a state congressman, or federal?
It's a newly. I'd have to look up a newly running person that won the primary, and that will be running nationally. And he said he's not anti-Semitic at all, but he stood by his statements that were like things that the ADL, like dual loyalty or subversion of society, and he was basically like, well, they're true. I stand by it. He's not anti-Semitic, but God forbid.
He thinks that Jews have a dual loyalty.
Well, I mean, if kind of like George Soros, but he wasn't just like George Soros. He was concerted, organized Jewish efforts to undermine.
Was he talking about George Soros? Is that what it was?
No, I think it was larger statements about the degeneration of society and Jewish influence.
Okay.
Which I'm saying that, I mean, you say like many Jews would agree, many Israelis would agree, but those statements are considered anti-Semitic, and there was pressure for the Republicans to denounce it. And so if you take it on that level of the polling, to say the majority, like half of Republicans don't care. You could say things that the ADL considers anti-Semitic.
Well, I don't know if I'd say they don't care. I would say
they don't care that
they don't consider it to be anti-Semitic is what it is. I don't know if they don't care about anti-Semitism. They probably just don't agree with the ADL. I mean, look, the ADL spent 4 years claiming that Donald Trump was anti-Semitic, besides the fact that he has Jewish grandchildren and that he's been the most pro-Israel president since Truman. Because what they do is that they use these tactics that they accuse, and accurately in many ways, QAnon of using. They'll look through like somebody moved their head a certain way, or they made a hand signal that meant this, and all of a sudden they magnify it, and you say they're like, you see, there's it doesn't like Jews. I mean, it's I'm just saying I take a little bit of a jaundiced eye only because we are in an election year, and there's going to be some very, very nasty things, attacks against Republicans, and that this is standard boilerplate stuff. They always try to smear Republicans as having something against Jewish people or minorities or gays or someone else. And they're going to try to lift up every rock they can find to see if they can pull someone out and then hold them up and say, you see, look at this person.
Like the ADL,
but in the broad social sense,
200 candidates 200 Republican candidates, I mean, because that's what they focus on, that are running that they consider anti-Semitic. And that includes.
All right, well, fine, but what I would argue,
local elections and
what I would argue
and various things.
I believe that in the broad social sense, conservatives and Republicans are not anti-Semitic or anti-Black or anti-gay. I think that they may not want to support certain agendas. They may not want to support sex education for kindergartners or surgeries or drugs. Doesn't make them anti-gay. They may not be strong. I would gather in general that they're probably stronger supporters of the state of Israel than are most Democrats. In fact, the Pew Research did a poll on that, where they found their support for Israel amongst Democrats.
Yeah, but those go concurrently, and saying if it's anti-Semitic to classify it that their political opponents are Jews, that whatever their issue, if it's immigration or if it's critical race theory or cultural issues, abortion, that a sizable element of the right will classify their political opponents as
those
Jews.
things. But that doesn't look. I mean, if somebody's
you say that's not anti-Semitic, you say, well,
no.
You're saying like, no, man, it is us.
Someone
will fight you in city
if someone
hall.
doesn't support critical race theory, that doesn't mean that they don't like Black people, because that's this is a particular agenda that one
Just to actively identify their political opposition as the Jews.
And who says this?
I would say a sizable element, maybe 25% of the Republican Party,
says that their opposition is the Jews.
In terms of the major culture war issues, that would say the Jews majority are.
That's possible. I mean, I guess that because a very large volume of Jews, particularly wealthier, more influential Jews, do support liberal causes. I think that is true. And
but is it still, even if it's true, you're saying just because it's true doesn't mean it's not anti-Semitic. I mean,
I can see maybe
it's like if you're conservative and you're identifying your key issues and you're saying your main opposition on these issues and you're putting it down to a group of people and saying the reason why these are cultural issues in America is because there's a group of people that are pushing them. And if it's the trans, homosexual rights, abortion, immigration, various issues that a sizable chunk, like even like a quarter, would identify the Jews as their direct political opposition.
I could see that. I mean, sure, the Jews, a lot of very prominent Jews are supportive of all of these liberal causes, and conservatives are opposing to them. So maybe there is
the word anti-Semitic. You say, well, yeah, that's anti-Semitic, even though it's true.
Well, it is. It probably is anti-Semitic if it crosses over into them saying that the Jews are doing this, as opposed to these liberal people who happen to be Jewish are doing it. So yeah, I mean, okay. I mean, maybe that's
the difference. I mean, say if the person's.
The difference is because there's nothing about.
Well, I say anti-Semitism as a political strategy. So if the person's goal is an anti-immigration activist or an anti-gay activist or an anti-abortion activist, anti-Semitism is a good political strategy.
Well,
Like,
look, Dooovid, you know something, you may be right about that. I think it's obviously a very troubling political strategy, but I
why
would
is it, I
hope,
mean, it's troubling for us by saying,
no.
by
And
saying,
I
well,
don't know if I mean, I think that they'd be, aren't
that's
they?
why it's a good strategy, because it's not troubling for most Republicans. It's only
I know,
troubling for
I
us.
don't know, but I mean, I think that if they're sticking with the issues themselves, um, then that's fine. And, to bring up the fact that some of the people who are the main proponents of it happen to be of Jewish background, obviously that's not relevant. And if they're using that as a way to say, well, the Jews are behind this, then that's
Why is it
bad.
not relevant? I mean, say if you're like, I
Because
mean,
it isn't. There's nothing
just
to
to put it
agree
from the
with.
other person's perspective, if you were a non-Jewish white in a red area and you were looking at your political opponents who are on the opposite side of the issue, and you put it down and say, well, it's basically the Jews, not all Jews, but the
Then they'd
Jews
be wrong. And
basically are
it's troubling. They
political
may say that.
opponents. And then if you connect it to, like E. Michael Jones classic, Christian
Well, he's trying to exploit that
anti-Semitism
because
or something like that, but just even if the person didn't have any connection to it, but just said our opposition to the culture wars in America is a people. It's not an idea, it's a people.
well, you look at it. I mean, you're right. I mean, maybe they don't view it as an idea; they view it as a people. I don't know that. I don't think
But you do
so.
know, I
But
mean, come on, you've been speaking to these guys for years. They've been telling you that for
well,
years.
yeah, but they're
I mean,
fringe.
you've been disagreeing with
Are you
them, but
talking about
I'm
Michael
saying, like,
Jones?
I've watched 100 people say that directly to
Yeah,
you.
but Dooovid,
Obviously,
Michael
we're
Jones.
disagreeing with them, but
No, I'm not disagreeing. My point is that I have talked to people like E. Michael Jones, but he's on the fringe. That's not mainstream Republicans.
well, I'm
That's
saying he's a Christian. I'm
he has
talking,
some cockamamie theory that the Jews are, like cursed, and that somehow, that there's this thing called Jewish privilege, which is a bunch of crap. And but he doesn't represent. I don't think he represents mainstream conservative thought.
no, he's not even conservative. I mean, he's not political.
Probably not. I mean, a lot of these people actually look at.
I was talking
Richard
about
Spencer
issues.
is a liberal Democrat.
I was talking about issues like I mean, we were talking about Christian anti-Semitism, but issue related, that anti-immigration, anti-homosexual, that and the culture wars.
No, but David, I don't think that
the more mainstream, so to say, alt-right, like Kevin McDonald, that is not Christian and just says
and
that,
those people are fringe people. Look, David, I don't think that most conservative Republicans who are supportive of President Trump and who want to have a victory in the midterms, they're not they're not anti-gay because they are against teaching kindergarten to third graders sex education. They're not
it's like Pat Buchanan.
anti-immigration.
You could give the names and say the fringe, but it's a sizable chunk, like I'd say a quarter, that of conservatives that identify the Jews collectively. It's not the idea of liberalism that's their opponent. It's the Jews collectively that are seen as their opponent.
Well, look, you may be right. I
And
hope
Pat
not.
Buchanan almost ran for president, and he was ousted. So
Pat
say
Buchanan
largely,
was not anti-Jewish. I don't believe that. I've interviewed Pat Buchanan. I've read several of his books. He was into, against what he viewed as a culture war by the left. I mean, he didn't.
but he said it was the idea of liberalism. He said it was the Jews specifically that something about us puts us on the opposition of the cultural war, and that the opponent's the idea, but also a people.
Pat Buchanan said that?
I'd have to.
I don't think so.
I mean,
I don't think so.
No,
I've followed Pat Buchanan. I've read several of his books. I don't agree with certain things that he's into, but no, I don't think that maybe he does believe that, but he's never publicly said that.
I mean, you're generally an apologist for conservative anti-Semites.
No, he's not. I don't consider him.
I'm saying you as yourself. They're saying, like, of course, like, you apologize for all the conservative anti-Semites.
I don't think he is an anti-Semite.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, but
I would, and if you showed me a conservative anti-Semite, I would not apologize for them any more than I'd apologize for a leftist anti-Semite.
Yeah, but I was saying the people that the organizations and the majority of Jewish people do hold to be conservative anti-Semites, you basically apologize for all of them.
Wait, put that by me again.
The majority, like the polling is saying the majority of Jewish people consider conservative anti-Semites like Steve Bannon, like Pat
Steve
Buchanan.
Bannon is not an
like-
anti-Semite.
Well, I'm saying that you're a
That is
general
absolutely
apologist
false.
for conservative anti-Semites.
I am not. I'm saying that people that are being called an anti-Semite, like you just did to Steve Bannon, they are not.
Well,
Steve
I don't
Bannon
even use the
is-
word anti-Semitic, but saying that
Yes, you did.
that's why I said
You
that
just
that's
said
polling
anti-conservative
among the
anti-Semites like
majority
Steve
of
Bannon.
Jewish people. That's
Steve
consensus.
Bannon is
That's
not an
consensus
anti-Semite.
opinion among the majority of American Jews.
And I think that they have been influenced by some very left-wing and Jewish
So I just
leaders.
make the point that you're an apologist for people that the majority of American Jews consider
No,
anti-Semitic.
I'm saying that if the majority of American
I give you a
Jews
long
believe
list
that,
of people that the majority of the Jewish people in America consider anti-Semitic, and
and
you
I would say that
defend.
a lot of these people should not be on that list, and that the ADL and other organizations have politicized the whole concept of anti-Semitism to imply that anybody that's not on the left is an anti-Semite, and they're wrong. This is, if you show me a conservative who actually is an anti-Semite, I would not apologize for them. But I am telling you that there are people on that list. Steve Bannon is not anti-Semitic. He had a Jewish wife. His children are Jewish. I mean, this is ridiculous. The Breitbart report, they were called anti-Semitic. Andrew Breitbart was a Jew. He was bar mitzvahed. He was adopted as a baby by a Jewish family.
Your defense
They
doesn't
had-
change the
They
fact
had,
that
you
the
know, this-
majority of American Jews disagree with you and feel that this person's
yeah, but the
anti-Semitic.
majority of the American Jews are influenced by groups like the ADL, who push this idea that anyone who's not on the left is an anti-Semite, and they're wrong. They are buying a bill of goods that is being promoted by people, by the way, who are not all that particularly Jewish themselves, even if they're of a Jewish background, and who are pushing an administrative state agenda and using anti-Semitism as a political football. And look, I would say the same thing to Black organizations in a way, who are pushing racism when it's not always there. They shouldn't be apologizing for racists. But when you take these ideas and you turn them into a political football to push a particular political agenda, and in the case of much of the Jewish establishment, that agenda is liberal, then you basically twist and distort the whole concept, which is what they've done. And too many Jews have been willing to not question this and just sort of go along with it. And thus you have people who are called anti-Semitic who are not. And when that happens, that actually increases anti-Semitism.
Well, I mean, it's possible, but just to put, okay, if we're dissidents in the Jewish community, and just to say that for you to have the hubris to say the majority of Jews are wrong,
I don't know if it's the majority of Jews. I think it's the establishment Jews who I remember here in Boston, we had Steve Grossman, who was the most prominent Jewish elected official and leader in the Boston area for many years. He was state treasurer. He was the head of the Jewish Federation. He wrote an op-ed piece in the Boston Globe, basically saying flat out that Donald Trump was an anti-Semite. And his proof was these minute things. It was like reading a QAnon article, because in 1917, I mean, he said he looked a certain way and there was a Jewish star seen on a piece of paper that was behind him.
Polling that the
Somebody
majority
moved
of
their
American
hand
Jews,
in a certain way.
I mean, think the majority of American Jews feel that way.
But
we
the point
discussed
is,
that before.
But the point is, Dooovid, that he was absolutely wrong, and that he was saying.
Well, I mean, to say, like, I mean, who your hubris.
Yes, I am saying
that
this.
you're right,
Dooovid,
and the majority of American Jews are wrong.
Dooovid, the reason Steve Grossman wrote that column is because he's a liberal and he didn't like Trump's policies and he wanted to stop Trump. So he decided to go out and push this idea that Trump has something against Jews when it's completely false. And that, a lot of Jews went along with it, first of all, because he's an influential figure in the state.
Well, I mean,
and secondly, because they are also liberal. And
I've heard you say this 100 times and you just, I don't think it leads anywhere, because basically you're calling the majority of American Jews dumb. And
no, I'm not saying they're dumb. I'm saying they're ideological.
Your opinion necessitates the majority of American Jews being wrong.
No, I'm not saying they're dumb. I'm saying they're ideological. They are liberals, and liberals, whether they're Jewish or not, tend to want to not debate their opponents and engage in discourse. They want to destroy their opponents because they're ideologues. And they will use methods like pulling out the anti-Semitism card or the race card or the homophobia card or whatever else in order to do that.
Well, they
That's
have red
all.
lines that Trump crosses, and that your average American Jew that saw enough TV, heard enough of Trump, considers him anti-Semitic and doesn't care if he has Jewish grandkids because he crossed their red lines.
Really?
And
Like
saying
what? Like
and
what?
saying you could
Giving
disagree,
millions of
but that
dollars
should
to.
be clear. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I guess your own
No,
cognitive
but
dissonance
it doesn't make
that
sense
that to
because
say your average American Jew, that's how they look at it, that there's red lines.
no, it's not the
And
average
Trump,
American Jew. It's
Bannon,
very, very liberal
you know,
Jews who are
Buchanan
influenced.
clearly crossed those lines.
He didn't
And
cross any lines.
well,
I
I mean,
mean,
to your average, the lines that your
was
average
the, let
American
me ask you
Jew
this, Dooovid.
feels.
Was
So
the average
your
American,
lines are different than the average American Jew, but
yeah,
your
that may
average
be.
American Jew, those were red lines, and Trump crossed them, and therefore
Like what? I mean, were they concerned that Trump gave billions of dollars, allowed billions of dollars to go to a nation that was developing a nuclear missile to blow up Tel Aviv, namely Iran? No, I think
They
that was
weren't.
Obama.
The polling was
No, they
clear.
weren't concerned about that because that was Obama. My point is that you can, this is an ideological argument. They're willing to buy into these memes that anybody that doesn't goose step to the left has something against Jews, because that's been pushed by this administrative state that is amoral and that has its own agenda and is trying to divide people.
I mean,
And I think that
you're saying that Jews are dumb and they don't really think what they think.
I'm not saying they're dumb. I'm
They
saying
only
that
think
they're
what they think because they've
I'm
been
saying they're
deluded and
ideological
misinformed.
in the same way that most liberals are ideological, Jew and non-Jew.
I mean, just presume they're acting
And
in
they're
their own best
waking up.
interest, and they feel that Trump crossed certain red lines.
Yeah, and they're starting to wake up and realize that
it doesn't matter if he
it's ridiculous. And they're waking up and realizing, especially now that Trump's out of office and we see what a disaster the world is, they're starting to wake up and realize that they had been duped by their own leaders who are not particularly loyal to Judaism or even Israel, and who are more loyal to the left. They view anybody who opposes abortion as being anti-Semitic. Really? Is abortion a Jewish right? I mean, is this something that is commanded in the Torah, that you abort your baby? They view anyone who's against gay marriage. I mean, well, that's kind of an accepted thing now, but that's
God
not
forbid,
Torah
here you are,
Judaism.
who's an apologist for anti-Semites bashing American Jews. So I'm saying that's the point, is saying, like, here you are, the Jewish defender of anti-Semites.
I'm not which
and
anti-Semite did I support?
and now you're bashing the majority of American Jews.
Dooovid, which anti-Semite have I defended?
Well, Trump.
I've just told you, this is a complete smear. He's not an
And you're
anti-Semite.
defending Trump by bashing American Jews.
I'm defending Trump's reputation
by attacking American Jews.
I'm attacking liberals who are smearing him as an anti-Semite, Jewish and
Jews,
non-Jews, anyone.
But I mean, you're attacking American Jews. So here you are,
and non-Jews who are liberal and who have an agenda.
But I mean, here you are on Holocaust Memorial Day attacking American Jews.
I am attacking liberals who have an agenda to. Who probably are
anti-Semitic. You're attacking the majority of American Jews.
No, I'm attacking the majority of liberals, some of whom are Jewish and some who aren't, who have an agenda consciously or who have unwittingly been influenced by those who do.
But that means you're attacking the majority of American Jews.
I am not attacking anybody. I'm getting into an ideological conversation where I'm pointing out that people have been duped, but they're starting to wake up. I think that this very illustration that anybody would say,
they're not deciding to wake up. They don't agree with you.
They don't have to agree with me. But the very illustration that that a group or a person would say that Donald Trump is an anti-Semite, which is obviously false, is in a sense proof that there's a major deception going on here. I'm not attacking people for having fallen into it. They have an ideology. Some are Jewish, some are not Jewish. Factually, I mean, you have in a sense the same ideology on the top levels of most ethnic and religious groups now, even Catholics. You have a large number of people in positions of influence who have bought into this internationalist, leftist, illuminated agenda. And they are running, in a sense, contrary to their own interests and the interests of their own people. It's not a matter of them being Jewish or not. Judaism is intact, even in spite of all this stuff. We still have a covenant with the Lord our God, King of the universe. And
we run circles, and we talked about this many times. I just think, you purposely phrased it in this way and kind of reject, the obvious that the majority, that the majority of American Jews don't see.
I don't deny that. I think a majority of American Jews are liberal. It's not that I'm not attacking. I'm attacking the liberalism, not the fact that they're Jewish. I'm attacking the majority of Protestants in this country are liberal too. I'm not attacking Protestantism as like I have something against Martin Luther.
Well, I'm not really attacking him. I'm just analyzing, and I usually assume that people are largely acting in their own self-interest. And
yeah, something I think
that the majority of American Jews that feel that Trump's anti-Semitic are acting in their own self-interest when they say that.
Well, they're not acting in their own self-interest of it.
So here you are claiming that the majority of Americans, Jews, are not acting in their own self-interest.
No, I claim that the majority of leftists are not acting in their own self-interest.
I'd say that, if it did clarify with data, they would accept the majority, if it's not a huge majority, but a sizable chunk, if not a majority of American Jews, feel that Trump was anti-Semitic, despite of all the defenses that you could give for him.
Despite the Abraham Accords?
Yes, despite everything that you could say that
of the embassy to Jerusalem.
Half of Americans.
Yeah, they do think that, but that only proves that they are.
That you don't think that that huge size, millions of Jews in America that consider Trump anti-Semitic feel that way in their own self-interest.
No, well, first of all, it's not in their self-interest, but secondly, it's not as Jews that they feel that way. It's as liberals who have bought into a liberal agenda that they feel that way, and they're willing to go along with that. But that's not right, obviously, and it's easy to prove it's not right. But yeah, they do believe it because they're liberals. They also believe that FDR was wonderful during the Holocaust, and they knew after this information came out that he had not only done nothing about it, but that he knew about it and turned Jews back from immigrating to the Western Hemisphere.
We got Mossad in the chat. So, just to add some more fire to it.
Why? What's in the chat?
Well, this guy calls himself the Mossad, who I don't know if he reached out to you to speak to you. So thank God Israel that Naftali Bennett, I guess fearing the violence, clamped down on the Temple Mount and forbid Jews from going to the Temple Mount till the end of Ramadan, which I think is another week. And he also prevented the flag march in the old city. And he actually has been receiving death threats, most likely from
well, I think that was a security question, don't you think?
Well, I'm saying it was a security question, but I'm saying the way Naftali Bennett decided to, they did, of course, they conducted raids in Jenin or security concerns and heightened security, but he decided to cede to the Islamic demands and forbid Jews from going to the Temple Mount till the end of Ramadan.
Okay,
but the violence in Israel, it seemed to have worked, and the violence in Israel, the Ramadan violence, has been limited. Although Bennett is facing pressure from his own side of from his own right wing, including death threats for closing the Temple Mount to Jews.
Well, look, it's sad to me that he did that, but I think that we understand why he did it. It's an issue of security, and that's just the way it goes right now. Israel obviously is not in a position where they're strong enough to handle Jews going on the Temple Mount during Ramadan. It's just that simple. You have to do it. It's the Jewish concept of pekuach nefesh, to save a life. If you send Jews to the Temple Mount on that day, they're at risk of being murdered. And so you want to prevent that from happening. It's just that simple. I get that.
Well, not that the Jews on the Temple Mount are relatively protected. That the army's there, and then they have riots or on the mount, or there's a terrorist, but that there's not rockets or there's not enough pressure to have terrorist attacks if the Jews, I mean, it could be it was direct negotiation with Hamas, that was Hamas's demand, and they ceded to it, and Hamas, called off the rockets and,
Well, I
or
mean, that
stopped
was the right
sending.
decision. It's a pragmatic decision, and that Israel has to deal with, as the Israelis themselves like to say, the facts on the ground. And the facts on the ground indicate that this year is not a good year for that kind of a thing. Unfortunately, maybe in the future, if relations are better with the Arab community, then it will be permissible. I think there have been years when it has been and years when it hasn't been. This is one of those years.
I
So,
was listening to David Friedman actually right before the show, interviewed by Carolyn Glick from the Jerusalem Post this week.
yeah,
And I think the interview was on Passover, which he posted this week. And he was against that, so to say that, like, no, I mean, the Temple Mount is a big deal. We do believe in it and have to be strong. And he mentioned a few things. I know Massad's in the chat, and that the State Department's official position is that our allyship with Israel is not in the strategic best interest of foreign policy interest of America, but we do it anyways.
right.
And
And I
from
think that's
the
right.
list of the strategic global concerns of America, that so to say the president or someone, the politicians, say Israel's our greatest ally, but from the State Department's, and this was Friedman himself said that considers our you call it strategic allyship with Israel against the best interest of U.S. foreign policy, but we do it anyways.
Right. That's always been American foreign policy. We've talked about this. The
Well,
State Department.
I'm not saying that's not what Mossad, or even if you're going to say, they say that you say like, no, it is in the best interest
No, I'm
of
not.
America.
It's not
Well, I
in
mean,
the
that's
best
what I say. It's saying that
I do
it's
too.
really
I've
not
talked
in the
about
best interest of America.
never
We're
was.
allies with Israel,
It
but
never
we're
was.
allies with Israel
That's right.
as
We're
a
allies
favor
with
to
Israel.
American Jews, or for different, not because it's the right thing to do, but because whatever reasons. And
No, Dooovid, we've talked about this. It's not in the best interest of the United States to be allied with Israel. And the State Department has always been anti-Israel, even Truman's time. In fact, when Truman went ahead, and we've talked about this, and maybe it's worth going over briefly again. When Harry
and even
Truman,
Rex Tillerson, that's they say that Jared Kushner having Rex Tillerson outed from being Secretary of State because the oil guy was just saying that what we're doing, Israel's not strategically in the best
it's
interest
never
of
been. It isn't in the best interest of the United States
but
because
that's why they got rid of Tillerson and put in Pompeo.
I don't know about that, but the point is that starting with Truman, when he was told by the Council on Foreign Relations, by Secretary of State George Marshall at the time, by Secretary of Defense James Forrestal, by all the smart people in the room. I mean, Dean Acheson, they all said, don't recognize Israel because it's not in the best interest of the United States. We're going to piss off the entire Arab world, the Muslim world, with their rich oil reserves and their mass populations and their huge land masses and all of this. We're going to drive them away. We're going to drive them toward the Soviet Union. Let's not forget, the Arab and Muslim world stretches all the way from the Atlantic shore right into the South Pacific, all the way from the borders of Siberia down to the Comoros Islands on the South African coast. They occupy almost about a third of the planet, maybe a quarter of the planet. And Israel had nothing. They didn't have any oil. They didn't have any money. They had influence slightly among Jews around the world. This was after the Holocaust, don't forget. And, Jews were at a very low ebb. But Truman went ahead and did it anyways. And the next day, Chaim Weizmann arrived.
We're not talking history lessons in Truman. We're talking Friedman saying the current
but that's
State Department under Trump.
Yeah, but
we're talking Rex Tillerson.
That's right. Okay,
I'm
fine.
not talking history
The
lessons.
State Department, whether it be
State Department, even under Trump.
Yeah, look, the State Department from that day till today.
Trump had to oust his own guy that was recommended and put in Pompeo because Tillerson
was not pro-Israel. Look, Dooovid, every administration from Truman till today, Democrat and Republican, the establishment has not been pro-Israel. The State Department has never been pro-Israel.
I didn't say they're pro. I didn't say they're not pro-Israel. Saying they are pro-Israel. They're saying that they're pro-Israel despite.
No, they
strategic
tend to not be pro. They tend to, even Henry Kissinger was not particularly pro-Israel. They're not. They lean against Israel. They don't. They understand. They're into the
No,
real.
I'm saying the opposite. They lean towards Israel despite it not being.
No, I don't think they do.
Interest.
I think that they are into realpolitik, internationalism, which is not favorable to Israel because it's not in their interest to be favorable. And that the reason that, and I know I've said this before, I will just, why not reiterate it? The reason why our government is supportive of Israel, and you have the exceptions like Harry Truman, like Donald Trump, they were exceptions to the rule. But the reason why the government is because the American people generally have been pro-Israel, and that includes liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans. Now, again, you are going to tell me, and we've argued this, oh, it's because of you know, which actually, by the what?
Well, I say,
yeah, and in a way, you actually
lobby.
sound slightly anti-Semitic in your answer, in that, oh, it's because of Jewish money and Jewish influence. No,
Well,
I don't think it is.
Our efforts.
I don't. I disagree.
Efforts.
I disagree.
Of people like me.
Yes, they have efforts. Sure, you have Jewish people like Sheldon Adelson who finance politicians who are pro-Israel, but it's still no matter how much money changes hands, if the American people are not pro-Israel, it's not going to happen. The American people generally have been pro-Israel. Now, there's moves away from that in recent decades, primarily on the part of the Democratic Party and the left, but even still, they are more pro-Israel for reasons that have nothing to do with national interest, because it's not in our national interest. It has to do with something that transcends that. I think there is something about it that gets into divine questions. It gets into, religious questions, frankly. It gets into moral questions in terms of supporting the right of a small nation
pretending you're going to convert to Christianity to Jay Dyer. Like Jay Dyer, like, please support Israel. I'll pretend like I'm going to convert to Christianity.
What are you talking about?
As opposed to what I'm saying, like, no, you got to write a check. Like, you pretending to convert to Christianity to Jay Dyer so that he supports Israel. Just write a check.
Dooovid, what are you talking about? I pretended to convert to Christianity?
Why is it you pretend like you're considering converting to Christianity?
When? I've never.
That was my interpretation of
that I was pretending I was going to convert to Christianity.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were defending Christianity and like things.
Doesn't mean I'm going to convert to Christianity. I do defend Christianity. I admire Christianity. Doesn't mean if I said something positive about Islam, does that mean I'm going to accept Allah and?
What do you say? But saying that you give overtures. You give overtures towards.
Absolutely false. I admire Christianity
and I believe against Jewish doctrine in order to try to get support, as opposed to saying just write a check.
I'm not trying to
write a check. You don't need to pretend like you're going to convert to Christianity. Just write a check.
Dooovid, I don't try to get support from anybody. I think I know what you're getting at, in that I told Jay Dyer that I generally support the dual covenant theory. And that's something that is against both Jewish and Christian doctrine. It's not trying to cozy up to Christians. Christians don't like it any more than Jews.
It's even against Maimonides. Even what you said about the crucifixion is directly against Maimonides, who said that Jesus was properly put to death and was a heretic.
I didn't say he wasn't. I pointed out that the Jewish understanding right up to the 19th century was that Jesus was put to death because he was a heretic, just like Jan Hus was put to death by the Catholic Church, along with 250 of his followers who were burned at the stake because they were heretics. I understand that. I didn't back away from that. But I think that in modern times, there's been a little bit of a reassessment among rabbis about Jesus. And now he is also viewed as having been a well-meaning and a devout Jew. Now, this is
anti-Semitic because it is anti-Semitic trope, but saying like, no, the reason the U.S. supports Israel is because a concerted effort of the Jewish lobby, and it cost us a bunch of money. And if we don't write those checks, they're not going
And
to
you see,
support
look,
Israel.
Dooovid, we've gone over this
And like, you know, I
territory.
mean,
I
we could
don't
run in
agree
these
with you.
circles, but saying like, no, like God
I
forbid, if
disagree.
we don't write those checks, they're not going to keep supporting Israel.
I
Like, you can have your
disagree.
fantasies about what you think about Christians or the American public, but it's like, no, you better write that check.
No, I disagree. Yes, they write the checks, and sure and I'm happy that they do. But I don't think that you can buy support for or enmity toward anything ultimately. I mean, look at Michael Bloomberg spent $100 million out of his own pocket to run for president, and we got him nothing. He didn't even have a single delegate. You can spend all the money in the world on something, and if people don't resonate with it, it's just gonna go down a
You can't make
hole.
someone unpopular popular, but you could
Whereas if you could spend practically
pro-Israel
nothing,
candidates that have a chance of winning. So I mean, yeah, Michael Bloomberg could spend all the money in the world and no one's going to like him, but you could, support people like Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio or Donald Trump that are likable to the American public. Like even like that, President Trump was certainly pro-Israel. The Jewish people knew that, and he was winnable. He was popular enough that the American public supported them, even though they didn't agree with him on his views on Israel. And saying, but you couldn't make someone unpopular popular, but you
that's
could
right.
support
You can't make
financially support people that have a chance of winning.
Yeah, you can, but the
It's
thing
like
is,
Rashida Tlaib. Like, there's nothing that the Jewish community is going to be able to do to defeat her. There's no other candidate that's popular enough to defeat her. So all the money in the world, even
isn't going to stop her.
tens of millions of dollars, isn't going to stop Tlaib from winning.
That's right, and she could probably win if she's that popular in Detroit, with probably not spending a dime. Look at Donald Trump didn't spend very much money. He didn't get any big support from big donors. And whereas if you want to talk about it, I mean, Hillary Clinton got all the money. I'm just saying that money can only go so far. It's ultimately, you have to have an idea that resonates with the average person, and the average American.
The strategy of the Jewish lobby in general is supporting popular candidates that are on our side.
Fine, and I hope they do. But the point is that, again, at the end of the day, Israel is supported because the American people support Israel organically and always have for the most part. That's
your statement. That's why I'm saying
I think that's been proven by.
No,
I think that's been proven consistently by polls and by an observation of the public trends in the United States. The American people have supported Israel and continue to, even though, as I said, that support is slightly weakening among Democrats, not Republicans, by the way. But which, of course, brings us back to the original contention of this talk, which is that Republicans do support Israel. And these polls are very suspicious that are coming out in an election year. And this gets into the same memes that the left pushes, which is that somehow conservatives have something against Jews, they've got something against Black people, they've got something against gays, and these are lies. And when I say that some Jewish people buy these lies, it's not because I got something against my own people. It's because I have something against the fact that they have been sucked in by this agenda for reasons.
We want to hear it from them, not from you, though. So I mean,
I will hear it from them.
It doesn't mean much. We want to hear.
I know people like this in my own family do it. In
fact, like you saying it doesn't mean much. You want to hear from them.
Fine, I will. I have heard it from them, and personally, I've heard it from them. As I said, I mean, I live in a family of people who think like this. I know. I mean, it's almost.
Yeah, I'm saying like you speaking on behalf of conservatives is largely meaningless. They're saying that. I mean, I want to hear this from. We want to hear conservatives say this, not you.
I've heard conservatives say it constantly. On my show over the years, conservatives support, are not anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, anti-Black, or anti-gay. They don't agree with certain twisted leftist agendas where frankly, they're using Jews, Blacks, and gays to push their agenda in a way that I would suggest, and that's my opinion, is not in their interests. And again, I think it's changing. I think that more Jews, especially now that Trump's out of office and we're seeing what a disaster and an insecure world we have, that they're starting to
new ADL survey came out. I mean, there was a troubling survey in Israel that, just another poll that said that over half of Israelis think that there's going to, said, I don't know, fear or think it was in Hebrew, but it was reported in the English media that there's going to be another Holocaust. It was like 55% of Israeli women, literally the poll that half of Israelis think that there's going to be another Holocaust. Kind of
I don't blame them. There
mind-boggling. I
probably
think
will
in
be.
America, the numbers would probably, like maybe 10, 20%, which is still astronomically like mind-boggling high, but in Israel it'd be
Yeah, I don't doubt that, Dooovid.
50%. You don't
Especially,
doubt that
especially now
50%
that, yeah,
think that there's
I
going to
think
be
that,
that like we're going to be killed, that half of
no,
Israelis think that we're going
I
to be
think
killed.
that now that Biden has stopped this, is trying to stop the sanctions against Iran, all they need to do is fire one nuke at Tel Aviv and you have a Holocaust.
Yeah, so
So yeah,
I mean, just so that the half of Israelis think that they're going to be killed.
because of the Iranian, is it because the Iranians are going to fire a nuclear missile?
Well, I mean, there's probably a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's the main reason.
I mean, you don't think it's because of conservatives or because of Trump
No,
or
I
because
don't
of
think it's because
Christianity.
of
You think it's
conservatives.
Iran, but like, yeah, it's probably a combination of a whole bunch of reasons. But
No,
yeah, it's
I
pretty.
think that I've talked to enough Israelis. It's because they're afraid that Iran is going to fire a nuclear missile at Tel Aviv. And the reason they think this is because Iranian leaders have said that they intend to do that, and they mean it. So yeah, there might be another Holocaust. And now that we have a Biden administration that is trying to end the sanctions, that could move the clock up a little bit in terms of that happening. So yeah, I understand why Israelis feel that way. Anyway,
So
Dooovid,
AEL
what do
numbers
you?
came out this week, the 2021 numbers, and God forbid it was like the worst year on record. And this year was sizable in the number of assaults, assaults went up a huge amount. And I mean, my what I've been saying, it's the numbers. Even Jonathan Greenblatt said that it was most related to, at least time frame, what happened in Israel. That the number of assaults on Jews or incidents happened hugely
Coincided with something
disproportionately
recent?
during the flare up with the Gaza last year. But the number, just like the number of incidents, it was
Dooovid, you know
the worst.
something? I mean, I'm old enough to say that that always happens whenever there's a military or situation in Israel. Going back to the 1973 war, I'm old enough to remember there is always an uptick in anti-Semitism whenever Israel stands up for itself. It's just the way it is. Israel's in the news, and you get people coming out of the woodwork and crawling out from underneath the rocks and doing anti-Semitic things. Anyway, Dooovid, what do you have coming up on your show?
Um, well, I mean, I did go to that Science of Consciousness conference, and so I streamed on consciousness a few times, mostly technical,
Yeah.
scientific stuff. Like some religious stuff. So most of my programming, I don't know if I have any shows on my channel. I mean, it's kind of disconcerting. Like I could talk about technical issues or try to interview people. It's like I don't really want to make my channel about arguing with anti-Semites.
No, it's not.
And even
I
like
don't have the stomach
politically,
for it.
um,
I
you
don't.
know,
I personally don't have the stomach for it. It'll give me a toothache if I do that.
so
But
like
except the occasional conversation with Dr. E. Michael Jones, only because I actually do respect his scholarship, even though I think he's completely out to lunch on those issues, on the Jewish issue, and I've made that clear. And it does sometimes. I kind of feel bothered that I have him on because of that. So, David, anyway,
well, yeah, I mean, God forbid, because you say harsh, like if a sizable chunk of the people who watch you, I mean, it's the problem with he has a huge audience, and like even like Jay Dyer, if the sizable chunk of the people who watch you have anti-Semitic inclinations, and then you
well, I don't think Jay Dyer has
then you agree
anti-Semitic.
with them about general. I mean, it's the problem. When I was trying to, when I came on to debate, the alt-right was largely in defense of liberal Jews, and I noticed the majority of right-wing Jews that were talking to these people were largely in agreement, even like the Mossad here in the chat, that like of the negative position towards the majority of American liberal Jews. So it's saying like if you're defending the Jews, but then if you're talking to someone who is a large critic of the Jews, but you're largely in agreement. And then even, Joseph Cohn, for my opinions on certain issues that, would come to me like, here you are agreeing with Adam Green. So it's tough. So
Yeah, there you go. And I mean, look at on
I kind of just
issues of,
got out of it. And
but
it's
Dooovid,
tough.
on issues of Judaism and Israel and anything related to it, I vigorously disagree with Dr. E. Michael Jones, and that's the bulk of what we've talked about. And I don't think
Well, no, I
Jay
mean, you agree with
Dyer
him
is.
probably on the majority of his criticisms about liberalism, and that
Yes, I
include the
do.
majority
That's
of
the whole point.
American Jews. You
That's
don't
why
look at it like you're attacking American Jews, but
Not
you're
at all.
attacking the position of the majority of
I'm
American Jews.
attacking liberalism, and I agree with him on those issues, which is why I find it so disturbing that he is into this Jewish, anti-Jewish thing. I mean, the fact that but I understand that he feels that Jews are liberal, but he doesn't make the connection that therefore liberalism is Jewish, because it's not. Jews have been infected by liberalism in the same way that other groups have been. We've talked about the fact that I trace it back to the false messiah, Shabtai Zvi, but I don't want to go into that right now. I just want to say that I don't think that Jay Dyer is anti-Jewish at all. I've never heard him even talk about Jews. That's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up, because I've heard him debate religious figures, Protestants and Muslims and different other religious groups and atheists. He had a great debate with T. Jump, but I never heard him talk about Judaism. That's why I brought it up. So I don't think that I don't get the sense that he has anything against Jews. Do you?
Well, I mean, from the mainstream, so to say, perspective, he's probably anti-Semitic, but I mean, no, I mean, relatively, he doesn't talk about the Jews. He doesn't complain to the Jews. Like you're really from the few Jewish people I haven't seen him speaking to. He has positions like on the elites and the globalists.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with him
would
on it.
probably but I mean that it's probably more Jewish than you would consider it. And I mean, he probably has a basic position like.
Well, I haven't heard him talk about the Rothschilds or any of that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, his position's like, I mean,
I had someone on my show who did.
I think
talk
E.
about
Michael Jones looks specifically. I mean, from what I see, Dyer saying is basically, it's Christ or nothing, and there's nothing unique about Jews from any other people that aren't going to be
doesn't
saved.
bother me. That's a
And if you're
Christian
looking
thing.
at the globalist, that it's not as where E. Michael Jones thinks that there's something unique about the Jewish people, as where Jay Dyer, to him, the Jews are kind of just insignificant. That they're just
It doesn't bother me.
like any other people, according
That's
to
fine.
him, that aren't going to be saved.
It does no. I don't, it doesn't bother me that he thinks that Jews should be converted to Christianity and that they're misguided because they don't believe in Jesus as Christ. That's what the Christians believe. I don't agree with it.
Well, I mean,
If I did agree with it, I'd be a Christian, but I don't.
Well, I was saying that there's degrees.
I'm not bothered by
you're saying
that.
your average American Jew considers supersessionism a form of anti-Semitism, not like E. Michael Jones, but it's saying if Dyer
What do you mean
is basically a
supersessionism?
supersessionist.
That he believes that the only way to be saved is to believe in Jesus.
Well, it's saying that the covenant is with the church, and the Jews missed the mark, and he's saying that not
Yeah,
for
but
the
he,
first,
something. I'm
that-
not bothered by
the
that.
church has got that he's a supersessionist, whatever.
Yeah, but they believe
theologically
that anyone who doesn't convert to Christianity is not saved. It's not just the Jews. That doesn't really bother me. I mean, I don't agree with it, of course, because if I did, I'd be Christian. But that's a basic of Christianity. The only way to be saved in the world is through Jesus. And that's what they believe. I don't think that doesn't mean that they're anti-Jewish. I mean, I just, to me, that's what they believe. I'm not
so that
bothered by
you
it.
just say that the covenants with
That's why we have two different religions. I mean, no, they don't recognize. They think that they took the covenant through Jesus. That's fine. That doesn't bother me. I don't think
Well,
that's.
I say it doesn't bother you, but I would gather that probably bothers the majority of Jews or Americans.
Probably does, and I respect that. To me, that's what they believe in. I don't agree with it, but I don't see that as being actively anti-Jewish. I just think that they believe that about anyone who's not Christian. They believe that about Muslims too. I mean, it's a very particular set of beliefs, and it's very exclusive, that they believe they have the one way, the truth, the light, and the way, or whatever they say. That's
Yeah,
fine.
the word becomes meaningless. So what's anti-Semitic, but my guess would
Doesn't
be
mean they're
that
anti-Semitic. Now with E. Michael Jones, that's another story. It's not when they start saying that the
even
Jews
Dyer
actively
Dyer
singled out as first.
didn't agree with you on E. Michael Jones in that sense. He just agreed for that it didn't have anything to. I mean, he said that the Bible says that Jews were collectively responsible of that generation, and at least in terms of the destruction of the temple or what happened to us at the hands of the Romans. And he just that as like from his biblical, that there's no collective punishment. But
Okay.
even
He might have said that, and I don't think I
he
agreed
seemed
with
pretty firm that he wasn't going to agree with you to the full level of what like if you were the ADL or something that wants him to say that Jews aren't responsible for the death of Christ,
Yeah, but I don't think he was saying that the Jews are collectively.
The Bible says it. So if you're asking,
I don't think he was saying that the Jews are to be collectively held responsible today.
he said that collectively we were in that generation.
Collectively we were in that generation. That's fine. Look at you.
Why are you saying that's fine? I say, why are you saying that's fine?
Because you just said that yourself.
Why I think that's what the Bible says.
Yeah,
I think why is that fine with you that he thinks
because he's not
the Jews were collectively responsible for the death of Christ in that generation?
Because he's not holding the Jews responsible for that today. Were the Jews responsible for executing Jesus? You seem to be saying that they were.
Well, I actually don't think it was. Maimonides says that we are.
All right, well, fine. I actually don't think they were. I think the Romans were responsible for it, but we could argue that one way or the other. The point is that if Christians want to believe that the Jews of his day were responsible for his execution, I don't think that, I can accept that. Obviously if they weren't saying it because they believed that he was the Christ. They believed he was a heretic. They weren't saying, oh, let's kill God. They were saying, let's kill somebody who's going to threaten our peace under Roman oppression. It's not.
We have to see the relation between the Orthodox Church and Judaism in general, and even the Orthodox Church in Israel. The current actually Bartholomew and the land ownership, but there's issues, and so it's interesting. He's an interesting character.
He is, and I think these are complex issues.
Christianity, but I wouldn't consider it philo-Semitic as opposed to.
No, I wouldn't either. But I don't think I would not consider him to be anti-Jewish in the same way that
he may not be. He probably is wise, just not talk about it. But he may be. He
may be, but he's not. I've never heard of.
It's possible he's anti-Israel. I haven't heard.
Listen, you're anti-Israel. That's something that transcends a lot of things. But he's never publicly. Maybe he is. He's never publicly said it. He's not advocating it like E. Michael Jones, who actually goes out and does programs with people and pushes this idea. And by the way, I've heard him talk to talk show hosts around the world. He was interviewed by someone in South America. I heard him interviewed by someone in Croatia, and you could tell that the host was not comfortable with what he was saying about the Jews, but they kind of sidestepped it and moved the subject.
But if you want to put it straight up, you're saying okay, you could be an apologist for him, but saying that
I'm not. I'm pointing out that
the mainstream Jewish push is for Catholics, which to some extent have minus distance, like E. Michael Jones, the Orthodox Church, to denounce trying to convert Jews. So Jay Dyer didn't say he's actively trying to evangelize Jews, but he held a position that is against the direction of the lobby of Jewish organizations, which would be for Jay Dyer to denounce trying to convert Jews.
I actually,
he feels that as a Christian, Jews do not need to convert to Christianity to be saved. And for you to be you're fine with that, to say that's not the mainstream Jewish.
Something. I actually
and that's the difference between Protestants and people like Trump, and that do why Orthodoxy has a much rockier relation with the Jewish community, because they do feel that Jews still need to convert to Christianity.
Fine. Look at
And if you
you
were
and I
pressing
know
Jay
that I don't
Dyer,
agree with
you would have needed to
the,
press him that you're
yeah,
saying
and I
that
don't
no,
agree
Jews do
with
not
the
need to convert to
mainstream of
Christianity to be
Judaism on
saved.
this.
And if you feel like that,
I
you're an
don't
anti-Semite.
agree. I
I mean, you
don't
don't call him an
agree.
anti-Semite, but that would be
No, I
the
don't
mainstream
agree with
Jewish
the
opinion on
mainstream
that.
of Judaism. I don't agree with the mainstream of Judaism on this. I think Christianity does teach that they are to convert not just Jews, but all people in the world. That is their religion. I don't agree with it. If I did, I'd be Christian. But I understand that that's what they believe in, and
I'm
I
just saying
would
that's an
try to change that.
anti-Semitic belief.
It's not anti-Semitic. They believe that all the world has to accept Jesus as the Messiah. That's not anti-Semitic.
It
It's
is
just
because it
what
goes against the identity of a Jew, that their
it
belief
goes against the
is in
identity of all
opposition to the essential
non-Christians.
identity
Do you think they
of the
have that
Jew.
same stand against Hindus and Buddhists? I mean, they
Well, it
believe
doesn't
that
matter that they're anti-Hindu or Islamic.
they're not
It's
anti-Hindu.
anti-Semitic.
No,
And
it's not anti-Semitic. It's they believe that the entire world, if you believe that Jesus was
I
the
know what they
Messiah,
believe, and you could just keep on repeating it by saying that that
and
belief
I'm saying that
is intrinsically
you know something,
anti the
that's just
essential
like a,
identity of what it means to be a
you know,
Jew. So
Dooovid, you're just like E. Michael Jones, because he says that it's anti-Christian for the Jews to exist because we don't accept Jesus, which is not true. Judaism exists as its own organic belief system, its own covenant that's not in any way dependent on any other religion. Christianity exists as a religious doctrine, as a theology, which holds as, which holds as its central tenet that Jesus of Nazareth was the Messiah. And in order to be saved, you have to believe in that. That's the basic tenet of Christianity. Anyone who doesn't believe in that is going to go to hell. That's the basic tenet of Christianity. Do I believe that? Do I agree with it? No. But I don't think it's anti anything. I think that's what they believe in.
I think Deborah Lipstadt, so say the anti-Semitism monitor of the United States, and even conservative, like under Trump, would hold that is a form, if you want to use the word anti.
But that's what they believe, Dooovid. That's the religion.
You're saying that's what they believe. That's okay.
Yes, it is.
Because that's what they believe.
Well, how is it?
At least they're consistent about it. It's okay.
Dooovid, how is it anti-Semitic if they also believe that Christians, that Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists are going to go to hell unless they believe in Jesus?
It's anti them too. It doesn't mean that it's not
anti-Semitic
because they're also anti.
All right, well, fine. Okay, so they're anti anyone who's not Christian.
Well, I was saying that is, Deborah Lipstadt's our official anti-Semitism
and I
monitor.
think that's
so she would mention that the precursors of anti-Semitism lies mostly with the church. In that sense, Jay Dyer's position is not as bad as E. Michael Jones, but is in line with Christian anti-Semitism.
Well, you can say that every Christian then is an anti-Semite if they believe in
the Catholic Church has ruled that Jews do not have to convert to Christianity to be saved. That was the change that you even mentioned to him, and that Dyer didn't make that concession. So E. Michael Jones is a Catholic dissident who disagrees.
Well, E. Michael Jones. Well, don't forget
Catholic Church.
Jay Dyer is
Catholic
also
and doesn't believe in that ruling.
Jay Dyer also said that he is anti-Catholic on my program. He's an Eastern Orthodox, and I don't know what the Eastern Orthodox position is on that. But and by the way, if that is the Catholic position, then how is it that E. Michael Jones doesn't accept that?
He's a dissident.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
He's a Catholic dissident.
That's interesting.
So I'm saying that E. Michael Jones is in agreement. Jay Dyer is in agreement with E. Michael Jones. And E. Michael Jones
on that issue
to the church because the church ruled that Jews no longer have to convert to Catholicism to be saved.
Well, great. I'm glad to know. That's interesting. I'm glad they did. I see that as an intra-Christian question. I would hope that they would see it that way, that Jews don't have to be saved. I don't really care because I don't feel I need to be saved by Christianity. But I don't think that if they do believe that, they're necessarily anti-Semitic. But having said that, I'm glad that they've moved on from that faith. My point to Jay Dyer and my point to E. Michael Jones was that the Holocaust, and this is Holocaust Remembrance Day, resulted in a change in the Christian mind and soul with regard to the idea that the Jews are responsible for the killing of Jesus, that they reevaluated that because that concept did contribute to the Holocaust. It wasn't the main responsibility of the Holocaust. The Holocaust was performed by the atheistic, paganistic, socialistic, evolutionary-oriented, Illuminati-minded Nazis who were anti-Christian as well as anti-Jewish. But Christianity did have a certain level of responsibility because of their belief that the Jews are somehow cursed because they're responsible for the killing of Jesus. Now, that belief system isn't necessarily conflated with this idea that the Jews should be saved by converting to Christianity. I see that as a separate matter. But
it says philo-Semitic leanings to it, because I mean, if you consider the anti-Semites who say, God forbid, Naftali Bennett spoke today at the Yad Vashem, and he said the long history of these things, and he said that we didn't do anything to cause it. So if you take,
I think Christians who recognize that have given up this idea.
Well, I was saying that's the philo-Semitic view of the Jews being cursed, because if you're taking the anti-Semitic view, say no, it was Jewish behavior. Anti-Semitism is a direct.
I agree with you, Dooovid, and that's why I'm saying that after the Holocaust, Christians changed that idea because they realized that kind of anti-Semitic belief that the Jews are responsible for their own suffering because they're cursed, that they gave up on that.
The Catholic Church changed that view.
I'm glad they did, and I think the
Catholic. I was saying that the idea
and most Protestant
philo-Semitic in saying that there's a rationality in saying Jews are good people. There's no way that the Jewish people deserve that. It must be that rejecting Jesus Christ is such an extremely serious sin. And it's saying this is somewhat widely what they teach Christians in order to fear Christ.
As I said, I think they gave up on that idea.
Look what good people the Jews are who didn't do anything wrong, but how badly we suffer. It must be
that they gave up on that idea.
The rejection of Jesus is such a serious sin that it caused that suffering upon them.
But they gave up on that idea after the horrors of the Holocaust.
Who's they? That's, the Catholic Church.
Christians.
Most Christians. I say no.
No, I think they did, including most mainstream Protestants.
I think they teach that to Christians. I would say, I would say that. God forbid, God forbid, I bump into Christians who feel like that all the time. And I'm just saying a lot of them are.
All right, well, that's a regression.
But I think that the Jewish people, as opposed to you're saying alt-right anti.
I'm sorry, but I think that
anti-Semitism is caused by
Catholic
bad Jewish
and
behavior.
Protestant
To say
gave
that
up the idea that the Jews are responsible for their own death in the Holocaust because
you can't speak on behalf of Christians. I mean, Christians who feel that way all the time.
They recognized that after the Holocaust, they did
how ridiculous
deserve,
why are you speaking on behalf of Christians?
A certain level of complicity. Because
why are you speaking on behalf of them?
Around the world, Christian nations, Catholic nations in South America, they refused to let Jewish refugees come in because they felt that the Jews were a cursed people who were responsible for killing Christ. And I think that after the Holocaust, that changed. And I view that change, not of all, but maybe not of the people you hang out with. But I think that most mainstream Christians gave up on that idea because they recognized that it was wrong and they felt guilty over the Holocaust. And they said, this is insane, that we're having people today, 6 million people had to die because of this twisted idea that somehow the Jews are guilty of killing Jesus 2,000 years ago, that I think that Christianity generally gave that up. Now, that doesn't mean all Christians did. The Catholic Church, you say, did. I think most mainstream Protestant churches did, like the Methodists and the Baptists and the Anglicans. Some maybe didn't. And you might say, I guess you're saying that the Eastern Orthodox didn't. That I don't doubt. But most Christians,
well, you're saying he didn't believe in collective punishment.
Especially most American Christians,
the Orthodox Church reject
and I think it's a miracle that they did. They gave it up, and I view that as almost as miraculous as I told Michael Jones and Jay Dyer, that it is almost as miraculous an event as the creation of the state of Israel after the Holocaust. These were good things that came out of very evil things. Now, again, I don't hold Christianity responsible for the Holocaust. As I just said, I think that was a socialistic world order event by a very evil, it was an evil manifestation of a world order movement that started with the French Revolution. But they have some complicity, and I think most Christians in their hearts recognize that, and they changed. Not all, maybe not the people you hang out with, but most
Yeah, I
Christians.
mean, now you have to make it like a personal attack on me. I'm sharing, God forbid, what I deal with on a regular basis, and not why I live in a liberal area. These are normal Christians, and you're not even understanding what I'm
They're
saying.
not normal Christians.
Most
They're
of these
Christians
people
you hang out with, Dooovid. They're Christians that watch your show and
not people I watch,
in your circles.
people I meet in a regular basis in regular
Well,
settings.
Christians I meet on a regular basis don't think that Jews are responsible for their own deaths in the Holocaust. I'm sorry. I don't think that's mainstream Christianity today.
Yeah, but you're not even saying what I'm saying, that say that the suffering of the Jewish people is caused by
because they killed Jesus. I don't think so.
Not because of that. I'm saying that you missed the point, and saying that's the logical rationale to Christians of why they believe in Jesus, the suffering of the Jewish people. To say that bad things happen to people who reject Christ. Look at the Jews. The Jews are good people.
Yeah, but I think they gave that up, Dooovid.
Why? No, you're saying something different than I'm saying. I'm not talking about the responsibility for Christ's death. I'm talking about largely a fear factor that Christians are scared of punishment for rejecting Christ, and they think that Jews are being punished for the rejection of Christ in a way that they also.
I know, I understand that, but I think
Philo-Semitic.
I think that
as opposed to anti-Semites, that we didn't deserve our suffering. Our suffering wasn't caused because we did something subversive to society. Our suffering was caused because, God forbid, rejecting Christ is a serious.
I get that, but I
thing.
think again we're on a merry-go-round here. I think that particular view changed after World War II.
How could you think you think that the majority of humanity changed their opinion? I mean, you could say, like, if you just say logically or historic, I mean, you're supposed to be an academic. You could say the Catholic Church passed canonical law that changed their official doctrine.
I think that
humanity changed.
Not humanity. I think Christianity changed after the war because of a sense of complicity and guilt for the Holocaust, even though they didn't actually do it.
They teach this in Christian schools right near where I live.
That the Jews are suffering because they don't accept Christ? I'd like to see that. I don't believe.
You're going to go ADL on them or something like that. And
I don't think you're talking about mainstream Christianity.
Not saying from like the E. Michael Jones, but just saying the explanation for why the Jews are persecuted is our rejection of Christ.
I don't think most Christian faiths people believe that anymore.
As opposed to, so say anti-Semites like the alt-right who say the reason Jews are persecuted is because we cause upon ourselves by being bad citizens or doing bad things to non-Jews.
And look at all those things.
We didn't do anything wrong.
All of those things are anti-Semitic. And my point is that I don't think mainstream Christianity or mainstream Christians believe that anymore to large numbers. I'm sorry. I travel in Christian circles also.
I think Dyer believes. I mean, personally, I think that's what
maybe
Dyer
he might. All right, fine. And E. Michael Jones certainly
because you're putting it in the different terms like to E. Michael Jones. But I think even Dyer was
maybe he does. He's never expressed that, but I get that. You probably heard that. Fine. But and he's an Eastern Orthodox. Most mainstream Christians don't.
What's in mainstream Christians?
Catholics, Protestants, American Christians, European Christians. I don't think they believe this today. I think that it changed, and I think it's because of the Holocaust that it changed. Anyway, Dooovid, we're way over time here. But great conversation, as always.
Okay, so Shabbat Shalom. Have a great weekend, and
to you.
A serious subject, and
you bet.
God forbid. So have a great weekend. Shabbat Shalom.